The emerald spires of La Maria pierced the rose-gold sky, their bioluminescent surfaces pulsing with the heartbeat of the living city. Captain Marcus Vale stood at the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he watched the alien world grow larger. The next 2 weeks tested Marcus's professional discipline in ways his military training never prepared him for. Princess Astrid insisted on maintaining her regular duties despite the threats, which meant accompanying her to diplomatic functions, cultural ceremonies, and her daily sessions in the meditation gardens where she communed with the living city. It was during one such session that Marcus first noticed something had changed. The bioluminescent flowers that usually glowed with peaceful blues and greens suddenly pulsed with warning reds. Astrid's eyes snapped open, her skin flickering with alarm patterns. "The city senses something," she whispered, rising fluidly from her meditation pose. "Something that doesn't belong." Marcus was already moving, his enhanced combat senses scanning their surroundings. The meditation gardens were supposed to be secure, accessible only to the royal family and their most trusted advisors. But as he'd learned long ago, supposed to be meant little to determined assassins. 3 o'clock, Astrid murmured, her warrior training showing through the royal facade. "The shadow isn't moving correctly." He saw it too, a slight distortion in the natural flow of light through the garden's crystal formations. Without seeming to move, Marcus shifted his position to place himself between Astrid and the anomaly. "Those security upgrades you requested?" "Installed yesterday." A slight smile played at her lips, despite the danger. "Waiting for your signal." The attack came with devastating speed. 3 figures materialized from seemingly nowhere, their combat suits a perfect blend of human stealth tech and Lemurian biotechnology. But Marcus and Astrid were ready. "Now!" Marcus shouted, dropping and rolling as Astrid pressed her hand to a nearby crystal formation. The garden's defensive systems activated, sending pulses of bioelectrical energy through the ground. The assassin's stealth systems flickered and failed, revealing their positions. Marcus didn't waste the advantage. His combat augments kicked in, flooding his system with enhanced reflexes as he engaged the nearest attacker. The figure moved with inhuman grace, definitely not human, despite the Earth-based technology they were using. "The crystals!" Astrid called out, her skin pulsing with combat patterns as she moved through ancient Lemurian defensive forms. "They're trying to reach the heart crystal." Understanding clicked. The meditation gardens weren't just for spiritual practices, they were connected to the living city's neural network. A properly placed charge could disrupt the entire city's defenses. Marcus intercepted the assassin heading for the central crystal formation, their combat styles clashing in a deadly dance. His human adaptability against their alien grace, neither gaining the upper hand until. "Marcus, down!" Astrid's voice rang with command. He dropped without hesitation as a burst of pure energy passed over him, catching his opponent full in the chest. The assassin went down hard, their combat suit shorting out. The remaining attackers retreated, vanishing into stealth mode, but Marcus knew they'd be back. This had been a test, a probe of their defenses. The real attack was yet to come. In the aftermath, as royal guards secured the area, Astrid approached Marcus. Her skin had settled into the deep blues of concern, tinged with something warmer. "You still trust my combat skills, I see." "You've learned a few new tricks," he acknowledged, trying to ignore how the exertion had left her skin glowing with an inner light that made her even more striking. "We both have." She touched a crystal formation, interfacing with the city's security networks. The attackers, their movement patterns were familiar. They fought like royal guards. Marcus had noticed it too, but hearing her say it confirmed his worst fears. "An inside job. Which means we can trust no one." Her eyes met his, silver depths hiding nothing. "No one except each other." The implications hung heavy between them. 15 years ago, he'd been her protector, their relationship clearly defined by duty and protocol. Now, as equals in combat and experience, those lines were blurring dangerously. The council will want answers, Marcus said, keeping his voice professional despite their proximity. The council may be compromised. Astrid's skin rippled with patterns of determination and something else, something personal. We need to investigate quietly, using resources they don't know about. She hesitated, then added, I have access to my mother's private archives. She left messages, warning of something like this. The mention of the late queen caught Marcus off guard. She had died while he was away, her passing marked by planetary mourning. What kind of messages? The kind that can only be accessed by someone with both royal blood and... She glanced at him meaningfully, human DNA. Marcus's mind raced with implications. The queen had always been fascinated by human adaptability, had championed closer ties between their peoples. Had she foreseen this crisis? Left safeguards that required cooperation between humans and Lemurians to activate? It's not just about protecting me anymore, is it? Astrid asked softly. Marcus looked at the woman who had grown from the curious princess he'd once known into someone far more complex and compelling. It never was, Your Highness. Her skin flushed with colors he'd never seen before, patterns that spoke of emotions Lemurians rarely showed to outsiders. Tomorrow night, she said. Meet me in the ancestral archives. And Marcus? The formal facade dropped completely. When we're alone, please, call me Astrid. As she walked away, Marcus realized he was treading dangerous ground. Whatever was hidden in those archives, whatever conspiracy they were about to uncover, it wasn't just duty driving him anymore. And judging by the color still dancing across Astrid's skin, she felt the same way. The ancestral archives lay deep beneath the royal arbor, where the living city's roots merged with ancient crystal formations. Marcus moved silently through the bioluminescent corridors, his combat augments detecting no surveillance. Either this section was truly secure, or someone had already compromised it. Astrid waited by a massive door that seemed to grow from the living wall itself. Her ceremonial robes had been replaced by a practical combat suit that complemented her natural iridescence. You weren't followed? 3 royal guards tried. Lost them in the garden district. Marcus studied the door's intricate patterns. You're sure about this? Instead of answering, Astrid pressed her palm to the crystal surface. It pulsed with recognition, but didn't open. My mother spent years studying human DNA, fascinated by your adaptability. She believed our peoples were meant to work together, that neither species could reach their full potential alone. She turned to Marcus, her silver eyes reflecting the crystal's glow. She also believed someone would try to prevent that future. Place your hand beside mine. Marcus hesitated only a moment before complying. The crystal felt warm beneath his palm, almost alive. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then energy surged through him, not painful, but intense, as if something was reading his very essence. The door dissolved, revealing a chamber that took his breath away. Crystal formations grew in impossible patterns, creating 3-dimensional star maps and data displays he could barely comprehend. At the center stood a single crystal pillar, pulsing with its own inner light. Mother's private research laboratory, Astrid explained, moving to the central pillar. What we're about to see, it could change everything between our peoples. She placed her hand on the crystal, and the chamber came alive with holographic displays. Marcus watched in amazement as data streams filled the air, showing genetic sequences, historical records, and... Are those prophecies? The ancient texts, Astrid confirmed. Predictions made by the first Lemurian seers, speaking of a time when our people would face extinction unless we learned to evolve. Her skin rippled with complex emotions. Mother believed that time was now, and that humans were the key. The displays shifted, showing research data that made Marcus's tactical mind race with implications. The Queen had discovered that human DNA contained sequences that could potentially unlock new abilities in Lemurians' adaptability, accelerated healing, even resistance to certain types of energy weapons. The assassins, Marcus realized. They're not trying to kill you. They're trying to prevent this knowledge from coming out. Look at this. Astrid manipulated the displays, revealing personnel files. Every royal guard who's shown unusual combat proficiency in the past decade. Every advisor who's argued against closer ties with Earth. They're all connected to something called Project Purity. Marcus moved closer, studying the data. A group dedicated to maintaining Lumerian genetic purity. They see any integration with humans as corruption. They're wrong, Astrid said softly. Look. The central pillar projected a new image, cellular structures showing active evolution. These are from my own genetic tests. The time I've spent with humans, especially you, it's already changing me. Making me stronger, more adaptable. Her skin flushed with patterns that spoke of vulnerability and trust. Mother knew this would happen. She knew we'd need each other. Before Marcus could respond, his combat senses screamed a warning. He spun, drawing his weapon as shadows detached from the walls. We've got company. Traitors, First Guardian Thale's voice echoed through the chamber as he stepped into view, leading a squad of royal guards. Their skin patterns showed disgust and righteous fury. The Queen's abomination dies here. The only abomination, Astrid's voice rang with authority, is betraying everything our people stand for. Evolution is our heritage, Thale. Change is our strength. Pretty words from a tainted bloodline. Thale's skin darkened with killing intent. Your mother's experiments end now. The fight erupted with devastating speed. Marcus and Astrid moved in perfect synchronization, their different combat styles complementing each other as if they'd trained together for years. The crystal chamber itself seemed to respond to their presence, pulses of energy disrupting their attackers' movements. But they were outnumbered, and Thale's forces had come prepared. Energy weapons discharged, forcing them back toward the central pillar. A blast caught Marcus in the shoulder, spinning him around. He heard Astrid cry out his name, felt her hand grasp his. And the world exploded with light. Where their hands met, energy coursed between them, spreading through the crystal networks. Marcus felt Astrid's consciousness brush against his, felt the living city respond to their combined presence. In that moment of connection, he understood what the Queen had discovered: humans and Lumerians weren't just compatible, they were complementary, each species' strengths filling the other's weaknesses. The chamber's crystals pulsed with blinding intensity. When the light faded, Thale and his forces lay unconscious, their weapons dead. Astrid stood radiant, her skin showing patterns Marcus had never seen before, beautiful and terrible in their complexity. The prophecy, she whispered, still holding his hand. It wasn't about preventing extinction through genetics. It was about this true partnership between our peoples. Her silver eyes met his, filled with wonder and something deeper. Marcus. I can feel the city through you, feel your strength becoming mine. This is what Mother saw coming. Looking at their joined hands, seeing the way her patterns synchronized with his own heartbeat, Marcus knew they'd crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And somehow, that felt exactly right. The news of Thale's betrayal spread through the royal arbor like wildfire. Within hours, the entire city was in upheaval as more members of Project Purity were exposed. But Marcus's attention was fixed on a more immediate concern: the remarkable changes happening to both him and Astrid. In the secure medical chamber, banks of crystal monitors displayed their vital signs. The Queen's private physician, Dr. Lyra, studied the readings with increasing amazement. The synchronization is unprecedented. Your neural patterns are actually harmonizing. Astrid sat beside Marcus, their hands still occasionally sparking with residual energy when they touched. Her skin rippled with patterns that shifted between wonder and concern. The city responds to both of us now. It's as if it recognizes you as one entity, Dr. Lyra finished. Her own patterns showed scientific fascination. The Queen's research suggested this was possible, but to actually see it. She gestured at another display. Captain Vale, your cellular structure is showing signs of adaptation to Lumerian energy fields. And Princess, your genetic stability has increased dramatically. Making us stronger together than apart, Marcus mused, remembering the surge of power they'd shared in the crystal chamber. Exactly what Project Purity feared. Before anyone could respond, the chamber's security crystals pulsed with urgent warning patterns. Chancellor Rhine burst in, his skin dark with crisis colors. The outer districts are in chaos. Project Purity isn't just a conspiracy, it's an army. They're taking control of the city's neural networks sector by sector. Through their new connection, Marcus felt Astrid's alarm spike. The living city was more than just infrastructure, it was the heart of Lemurian civilization. If Project Purity gained full control, they'll shut down everything, Astrid said, rising. Communications, defense systems, even life support in some sectors. They're willing to strangle the city to prevent change. Marcus's tactical mind raced ahead. They'll target the central neural nexus. From there, they could dash. He stopped as Astrid's hand gripped his arm. No, she said, her patterns shifting, to reveal a new plan forming. They'll target the Genesis chamber. The source of the city's biological power. Mother's research shows it's also where the first seeds of human Lemurian compatibility were planted centuries ago. The ancient texts, Dr. Lyra breathed. They speak of star visitors who helped seed our world, whose essence became part of our evolution. Those star visitors were human ancestors, Chancellor Rhine realized. Which means this conflict was inevitable. We've been moving toward reunion since the beginning. The chamber's crystals flared with warning again. Marcus felt the disruption through his new sensitivity to the city's networks. They're moving. Multiple strike teams converging on the deep sectors. Astrid's hand found his, their energies synchronizing instantly. The Genesis chamber has defenses even the Royal Guard doesn't know about. But they can only be activated by. She met his eyes meaningfully. Both of us, Marcus finished. The implications were staggering. The Queen hadn't just studied human Lemurian compatibility, she'd prepared for this exact scenario. Captain Vale, Chancellor Rhine said formally, by my authority as head of the High Council, I hereby grant you full citizenship of Lemuria, with all rights and privileges thereof. His patterns showed grim determination. Whatever happens in the Genesis chamber, let history show we chose unity over prejudice. Marcus felt Astrid's approval and something warmer through their connection. The formal recognition of his status removed the last barrier between them, making their growing bond politically acceptable even as it remained unprecedented. They moved quickly through the living city's arteries, their enhanced connection allowing them to sense Project Purity's forces and avoid confrontation. The deeper they went, the more ancient the structures became, until they reached levels few living Lemurians had ever seen. The Genesis chamber itself took Marcus's breath away. A vast spherical space, its walls alive with the oldest crystal formations on the planet, pulsing with the pure energy that fed the entire city. At its heart, a column of living light rose into infinity. The first seed, Astrid whispered reverently. The beginning of all Lemurian life, and apparently not entirely Lemurian after all. They had barely reached the central platform when the chamber's ancient defenses hummed to life. Project Purity forces had arrived, led by a figure Marcus recognized from the personnel files: Supreme Guardian Voss, Thale's mentor and the true architect of the anti-human conspiracy. Your mother was a fool, Voss called out, his skin rippling with zealot's certainty. Thinking we could be improved by mixing with lesser beings. Our perfection was achieved eons ago. Perfection is stagnation, Astrid responded, her voice carrying the authority of generations. And you call yourself a guardian? Your duty is to protect our people's future, not freeze us in the past. The chamber erupted into chaos as both sides engaged. But this time, Marcus and Astrid were ready. Their synchronized movements had become even more fluid, each anticipating the other's actions perfectly. Where Marcus's tactical expertise identified weaknesses, Astrid's mastery of Lemurian combat forms exploited them. Yet Voss had centuries of experience and fanatical determination. His forces drove them back toward the first seed, their energy weapons threatening to destabilize the ancient crystal matrices. The chamber's defenses, Astrid communicated through their bond. Mother's notes, we need to link directly with the first seed. Marcus understood instantly. It was insanely dangerous. Linking with the pure energy that had birthed Lemurian civilization could destroy them both. But if the Queen's research was correct, if humans and Lemurians were truly meant to evolve together. Their hands clasped as they backed against the first seed's column. Energy surged through them, different from before, ancient, primal, feeling like the beginning of everything. And in that moment of connection, they saw the truth that would change both their worlds forever. The first seed's energy coursed through Marcus and Astrid, connecting them not just to each other, but to the entire history of Lemuria. In that moment of perfect unity, they witnessed what the Queen had discovered, the true origin of both their species. Ancient starships, carrying the ancestors of humanity, seeding worlds across the galaxy. On Lemuria, their genetic material had merged with native crystal formations, creating a new form of life that would become the Lemurian people. The separation of their species had never been natural, it was an accident of time and distance, now finally being corrected. You see? Astrid's voice echoed both aloud and through their bond. We were never meant to remain apart. The chamber filled with blinding light as the first seed responded to their combined presence. Energy cascaded through the crystal networks, reaching every corner of the living city. Where Project Purity's forces had seized control, the ancient systems reset, recognizing the original pattern of human-Lemurian symbiosis. Voss staggered back, his skin showing patterns of shock and denial. Impossible, we are pure. We cannot be. We are all children of the stars, Marcus projected, his voice carrying new harmonics as the first seed's energy transformed him. Your purity was never about isolation, it was about potential. The potential to grow, to change, to become more than we are alone. Through their shared consciousness, he and Astrid began to access the city's most ancient protocols. Crystal formations throughout the chamber shifted, revealing hidden geometries that had waited millennia for this moment. The first seed's light took on new colors, patterns that spoke of rebirth and reunion. You would destroy everything we are. Voss raised his weapon in desperate defiance. Better extinction than contamination. No, Astrid stepped forward, her form radiating power that was neither purely human nor Lemurian, but something gloriously new. We choose life. We choose growth. We choose the future our ancestors always intended. The Genesis chamber responded to their shared will. Waves of transformative energy swept outward, not forcing change, but offering possibility. Throughout the city, humans and Lemurians felt the ancient connection between their species reawaken. Those who welcomed it found themselves evolving, growing stronger together. Those who resisted remained as they were, but could no longer deny the truth. Voss's weapon clattered to the ground as the evidence of his species' true heritage became undeniable. Around the chamber, Project Purity forces lowered their weapons, their skin patterns showing confusion, giving way to awe. Through it all, Marcus and Astrid remained joined, their connection deepening beyond mere physical or mental bonds. They were becoming something unprecedented, living proof that humanity and Lemuria could not only coexist but flourish together. The Queen knew, Marcus realized, accessing memories that had waited in the first seed. She knew her daughter would need someone who could help her bridge both worlds. That's why she arranged for me to be here 15 years ago. She gave us time to grow into who we needed to be. Astrid's patterns showed love for her mother's foresight. Time for me to become strong enough to lead our people into a new age, and time for you to become someone who could stand beside me as an equal. The chamber's energies began to stabilize, the first seed settling into a new pattern that incorporated both human and Lemurian elements. Throughout the city, changes were already spreading. Humans found themselves developing subtle iridescence, while Lemurians gained increased adaptability. But more importantly, the artificial barriers between their peoples were finally falling. Chancellor Rhine approached, his skin showing formal patterns. The High Council is convening an emergency session. The people must be told the truth about our shared heritage. He paused, ancient protocols surfacing in his memory. Princess Astrid, Captain Vale, there are ceremonies, older than our recorded history, for joining our peoples in leadership as well as blood. Marcus felt Astrid's joy through their bond even before she spoke. The ancient texts speak of star-bonded pairs who would guide both species toward their shared destiny. Her silver eyes met his, filled with love and certainty. I can think of no better way to show our people that separation was never our natural state. Looking at her, feeling the rightness of their connection, Marcus knew they had reached a moment that would reshape both their civilizations. The path ahead would not be easy, change never was, but they would face it together, as their ancestors had always intended. The stars themselves led us to this moment, he said softly, taking her hand. Where their fingers touched, energy sparkled with the promise of new possibilities. Whatever comes next, we face it as one. Astrid's skin rippled with the colors of dawn, not an ending, but a beginning. As we were always meant to be. Above them, the first seed pulsed with ancient approval as humanity and Lemuria took their first steps toward a shared future, guided by two hearts that had found their way home across the stars. The living city sang with joy as its networks registered the change spreading through both populations. In the Genesis chamber, surrounded by the proof of their shared heritage, Marcus and Astrid sealed their bond with a kiss that sparkled with crystalline light, a promise to both their peoples that love could indeed bridge the gulf between stars.